The crisp mountain air bit at Nathan Wells' face as he adjusted his climbing gear, the early morning sun casting long shadows across the snow-capped peaks of the Cascade Range. As one of the most experienced rangers in the Pacific Northwest, he'd grown accustomed to solitude, preferring the company of towering pines and wildlife to the chaos of civilization. But nothing in his 15 years of service could have prepared him for what this day would bring. The first sign that something was amiss came when his radio picked up unusual interference, not the typical static of bad weather, but a pulsing pattern that made his hair stand on end. His training taught him to report any anomalies, but up here, 3 days into his patrol route, communication with base camp was spotty at best. Nathan followed the strengthening signal, his boots crunching through fresh snow as he navigated the treacherous terrain. The interference led him to a narrow valley he knew well, one that typically served as a migration route for local wildlife. Today, however, the valley held something entirely different. The impact site stretched nearly 50 yards across, the snow melted in a perfect circle despite the freezing temperatures. At its center lay what could only be described as a vessel, its metallic surface gleaming with an iridescent sheen that shifted colors like oil on water. But what truly caught Nathan's attention was the figure sprawled nearby, a female form nearly 15 feet tall, her skin a deep azure marked with luminescent patterns that pulsed weakly in the morning light. She wore what appeared to be combat armor, though unlike anything human military had developed. Parts of it were damaged, revealing wounds that leaked a silvery fluid into the snow. Despite her alien appearance, there was something undeniably noble about her features, even in unconsciousness. Nathan's first instinct was to call for backup, but as he reached for his radio, the warrior's eyes snapped open, revealing irises that swirled with galaxies of gold and violet. She spoke, her voice resonating with harmonics that seemed to bypass his ears and vibrate directly in his mind. Human, she managed, her universal translator struggling to convert her native language. I mean no harm. I am Commander Nyara of the Stellar Guard. My ship was attacked. Nathan approached cautiously, his medical training warring with his security protocols. I'm Nathan Wells, Forest Service. You're injured. Let me help. Nyara attempted to rise but faltered, her massive frame shuddering with the effort. The cold, it interferes with my healing protocols. I require shelter. Nathan knew of an emergency cabin less than a mile away, one of the larger ones used for group rescues. It would be a challenge to accommodate her size, but it was their best option. Can you walk with assistance? I know somewhere safe. The journey to the cabin was arduous. Despite her weakened state, Nyara moved with a fluid grace that belied her massive size. She explained between labored breaths that she was a sentinel, a member of an ancient race of warriors tasked with protecting developing civilizations from exploitation. Your world was not my assigned sector, she admitted as they finally reached the cabin. I was pursuing raiders who prey on primitive worlds when they damaged my ship. Earth was the nearest viable landing site. Inside the cabin, Nathan worked quickly to start a fire while Nyara carefully maneuvered herself into a semi-comfortable position. The structure creaked ominously but held. As warmth filled the space, her color improved, the patterns on her skin pulsing more strongly. You're unlike the humans I've studied, she observed, watching as Nathan expertly dressed her wounds with supplies from his medical kit. Though designed for humans, the basic principles of wound care seemed universal enough. Most would flee or attack when faced with something like me. Nathan smiled wryly as he worked. Most humans haven't spent as much time in the wilderness as I have. You learn to judge threats by actions rather than appearances out here. He paused, noting how her wounds were already beginning to heal. Though I have to admit, this is a first even for me. As day turned to evening, they shared stories, Nathan of his life in the mountains, Nyara of her centuries protecting developing worlds. But he sensed she was holding something back, some greater purpose that brought her to this sector of space. The truth emerged as night fell. My people are dying, she finally confessed, her voice heavy with the weight of her words. A genetic degradation we cannot solve. We've searched countless worlds for compatible DNA to help us adapt, to save our species. She looked at Nathan with those mesmerizing eyes. Human genetic diversity is unique in all my travels. You might be our last hope. Before Nathan could process this revelation, his radio crackled to life with urgent voices. Someone had detected the crash. Soon, this peaceful valley would be swarming with authorities, and he knew instinctively that Nyara's presence needed to remain secret, at least until they understood the full implications of her mission. They had hours at most before the search teams arrived. As Nathan looked at the extraordinary being before him, he realized his life's path had just taken an unexpected turn. Whatever came next would change not just his future, but potentially the future of two species. The fire crackled in the silence as they began planning their escape, the first steps of a journey that would test the limits of trust between their worlds. Outside, the mountain winds howled, as if nature itself recognized the magnitude of what was unfolding in this remote cabin, far from the eyes of both their civilizations. Dawn broke over the mountains as Nathan guided his off-road vehicle through forgotten logging trails, each bump causing Nyara to shift uncomfortably in the modified trailer he'd hastily arranged with tarps and padding. They'd managed to evacuate the crash site mere hours before government helicopters descended on the valley. The genetic degradation, Nathan spoke over their secure comm link, tell me more about it. Nyara's voice came through with that same otherworldly resonance. My people, the Valorians, were once the guardians of 1,000 worlds. Our enhanced biology made us perfect protectors, strength, longevity, rapid healing. But these gifts came with a price. She explained how centuries of genetic engineering had created an evolutionary dead end. Each generation became less viable than the last, with fewer successful births. Their population had dwindled from billions to mere thousands. We discovered that human DNA contains something remarkable, she continued. Your species evolved naturally to adapt to countless environmental pressures. This resilience, this raw genetic diversity, could be the key to our salvation. Nathan navigated a particularly treacherous bend. And that's why you're really here? To collect human genetic samples? Not exactly, Nyara's response carried a note of hesitation. We've tried simple genetic sampling. It's not enough. We need. She paused, willing partners. True genetic fusion through natural reproduction. The vehicle swerved slightly as Nathan processed this information. You're saying your people want to mate with humans? Only with compatible individuals. Our scientists discovered rare humans possess a genetic marker that could successfully combine with our DNA. When I crashed, my systems detected you carry this marker. Before Nathan could respond, a shadow passed overhead. A black helicopter, unmarked, definitely not standard military. We've got company, he warned, accelerating down the mountain path. The helicopter opened fire, not with bullets, but with some kind of energy weapon that left scorched craters in the road. Nathan's ranger training kicked in as he executed evasive maneuvers, but their pursuers were relentless. Private military contractors, Nyara's voice was grim. They must have detected my ship's energy signature. The technology alone would be worth billions to them. A blast struck too close, sending their vehicle into a spin. Nathan fought for control as they skidded toward a cliff edge. Just as they began to tip over, something extraordinary happened. Despite her injuries, Nyara burst from the trailer, her massive form moving with impossible speed. She grabbed the vehicle, anchored herself, and pulled them back from the brink with raw strength. The helicopter swooped in for another attack run. Nathan, she commanded, drive. Before he could protest, she launched herself into the air with devastating grace. Her massive form collided with the helicopter, causing it to spiral away from their position. The sound of rending metal echoed through the valley. He kept driving, heart pounding, until he spotted Nyara waiting at a predetermined rendezvous point. She'd disabled the helicopter without casualties. The crew had managed to land roughly but safely some distance away. "You could have killed them," Nathan observed as she carefully rejoined him in the modified trailer. "I am a protector, not an executioner," she replied simply. "But they will not be our last challenge. Others will come, from both our worlds. There are those among my people who believe we should take what we need by force, and humans who would weaponize anything they learn from us." As they continued their journey toward a safe house Nathan knew from his ranger days, he found himself asking the question that had been building since their escape. This genetic compatibility, what exactly would it mean? For both of us? Nyara's patterns pulsed thoughtfully. A true union would create offspring with the best of both species, our strength and longevity combined with human adaptability. But it's more than biological. Our species forms deep psychological bonds with compatible mates. It would be profound. They drove in silence as mountain forests gave way to desert scrubland. The safe house was remote, off all official grids, and built into natural cave systems. As they approached, Nyara spoke again, her voice soft despite her immense size. "I must be clear, Nathan. I am not just seeking any compatible human. My position in the Stellar Guard gives me access to genetic scanning technology far beyond what the Raiders possess. When my ship crashed and I scanned you, the compatibility reading was unprecedented. In all our searches, we've never seen such potential for successful genetic fusion." Nathan parked the vehicle in a natural formation that would shield it from aerial observation. As he helped Nyara navigate the cave entrance, he finally asked the question that would shape everything to come. "And if I agree to help your people, to help you, what happens next?" Nyara's eyes met his, swirling with those impossible colors. "Then we change the future of both our species. But the choice must be yours, freely made. I will not force this burden upon you." As they settled into the safe house, both knew they were at a crossroads. Behind them lay burning wreckage and armed pursuers. Ahead lay mysteries of genetics, evolution, and the possibility of something unprecedented in human history. The weight of two species' futures hung in the balance, but in that moment, in the quiet of the desert cave, it felt intensely personal, a choice between the life Nathan had known and an extraordinary destiny he never could have imagined. The desert safe house became their sanctuary for 3 days, giving Nyara time to heal and Nathan opportunity to absorb the magnitude of his decision. He'd agreed to help her, but the path forward remained unclear. Through their conversations, he learned more about the complex politics that would threaten their mission. "The Valerian Council is divided," Nyara explained while working on a compact communications device she'd salvaged from her ship. "The progressive faction supports voluntary genetic integration. The purists believe it will dilute our warrior heritage. They'd rather our species die proud than evolve." Nathan watched her massive hands delicately manipulate components smaller than his fingernails. "And these raiders you were chasing? Mercenaries hired by the purists. They attack worlds with compatible populations, creating chaos that prevents peaceful contact. They've been following my research team for months." A warning system Nathan had rigged from modified Ranger equipment suddenly blared. Multiple vehicles were approaching from the east. Nyara's head snapped up, her bioluminescent patterns flaring with alert patterns. "Military convoy," she confirmed, her enhanced vision penetrating the cave walls. "Your government has found us." They enacted their escape plan, developed during long hours of preparation. Nathan activated charges that would seal most cave entrances, forcing their pursuers to use predictable routes. As dust and rock settled, they moved deeper into the cave system. "The tunnels connect to an underground river system," Nathan explained as they navigated the darkness. "I mapped it years ago. There's a way out that emerges 50 miles south." Their progress was interrupted by the echo of boots on stone. Another team had entered through a secondary entrance. The narrow passages meant Nyara couldn't use her full combat capabilities without risking a cave-in. "Stay behind me," she whispered, her massive frame somehow moving silently despite the confined space. "My armor can deflect their weapons." The first soldiers rounded the corner, weapons raised. Their training didn't prepare them for the sight of a 15-foot alien warrior. The moment of shock was all Nyara needed. She moved with liquid grace, disarming the entire squad before they could fire a shot. Nathan quickly gathered their weapons and communications equipment. "These aren't standard military," he observed, checking the gear. "No identifying marks. Black Ops, maybe something worse." "The purists aren't the only ones with mercenaries," Nyara replied grimly. "There are human organizations that would do anything for advanced technology. We must assume both our species' extremists are working together now." They pushed deeper into the cave system, the sound of pursuit growing more distant. The air grew humid as they approached the underground river. But as they reached the water's edge, they found their path blocked by a cave-in. "Recent," Nathan assessed, checking the rocks. "This was intentional. They've been preparing for us." Nyara's patterns pulsed with determination. "Then we make our own path." She pressed her hands against the cave wall, closing her eyes in concentration. Her body began to glow with increasing intensity. "My people were engineered to survive extreme environments," she explained, her voice strained. "Including the vacuum of space. What few know is that we can temporarily channel our biological energy for other purposes." The rock beneath her hands began to soften, then liquefy. She was generating enough heat to melt solid stone. With methodical movements, she carved a new tunnel, the molten rock cooling behind them as they progressed. "This will drain my energy reserves," she warned. "I'll need time to recover." They emerged into a massive cavern, the underground river roaring beneath them. Multiple tunnels converged here, and voices echoed from several directions. They were surrounded. Nathan quickly assessed their options. The river was their only chance, but the current looked lethal. As if reading his thoughts, Nyara spoke. "My armor can protect us both from the impact and cold. But Nathan..." She paused, meeting his eyes. "This will require complete trust. We would need to be, physically very close." Understanding dawned. Their only chance was for him to be embraced within her massive arms, protected by her biological defenses and advanced armor. The prospect was both terrifying and strangely thrilling. The voices grew closer. Nathan made his decision, stepping toward her. Nyara enfolded him in her arms with surprising gentleness, her massive form curling around him protectively. Her bioluminescent patterns shifted to cover them both in a soft glow. "Hold your breath," she whispered, her voice resonating through her entire frame. Then she launched them into the raging current. The world became a chaos of cold and motion. Nathan felt Nyara's arms tighten as they were thrown against rocks and pulled by the current. Her armor absorbed impacts that would have shattered human bones. Through it all, he remained secure in her embrace, their hearts beating in strange synchronization. When they finally emerged into moonlight, carried by the river into a remote canyon, neither immediately moved to separate. The shared danger, the intimate trust required for survival, had forged something new between them, something that transcended the already extraordinary circumstances of their meeting. As they made their way to higher ground, both knew their relationship had fundamentally changed. What began as a practical alliance was evolving into something their respective species had never anticipated. Their genetic compatibility had drawn them together, but surviving together, trusting each other with their lives, was creating bonds that no scientific analysis could have predicted. The abandoned mining town became their refuge, its dilapidated structures offering surprising advantages. Nyara's massive frame fit comfortably in the old equipment warehouse, while the surrounding hills provided natural vantage points. As days passed, they established a routine, taking turns watching for pursuit while sharing more of their respective worlds. Nathan found himself increasingly fascinated by Valerian culture. Your people's connection to compatible mates, he began one evening, watching Nyara's bioluminescent patterns shift in the darkness. You mentioned it's more than physical? Nyara's patterns pulsed with gentle colors he was learning to read as thoughtfulness. We call it the resonance. When compatibility is strong, we begin to sense each other's emotional states, even share dreams. The ancient texts say it helped our ancestors fight as perfect units in battle. Is that what's happening between us? Nathan had noticed changes, moments when he could swear he felt emotions that weren't his own, flashes of memories he'd never lived. Yes, she admitted. The strength of our connection, it's unprecedented. Most human Valorian pairs require months of proximity to develop even basic resonance. But you. Her patterns flickered with colors he'd never seen before. Their conversation was interrupted by a distant rumble. They rushed to the observation point, watching as multiple aircraft descended on the far side of the valley. But these weren't the sleek military vehicles they'd been evading. Valerian ships, Nyara's voice was tight. The progressive faction must have tracked my distress beacon. They're here to help, but their presence will draw every hostile force within 1,000 miles. As if confirming her words, military helicopters appeared on the horizon. The night sky erupted with energy weapons and human artillery, turning their sanctuary into a battlefield. We need to reach the progressive ships, Nyara stated, her warrior training evident in her swift analysis. They'll have genetic synthesis equipment on board. We can complete our bond before the purists arrive in force. Nathan caught the weight in her words. Complete our bond? You mean? A full genetic fusion, yes. But Nathan, she turned to him, her massive form backlit by explosive flashes, it would be irreversible. You would be changed at a cellular level. Our lifespans would align, our connection would become permanent. The choice must be yours. The decision crystallized with surprising clarity. The past weeks had shown him a universe larger than he'd imagined, and in Nyara he'd found something he never knew he was missing. The resonance between them had grown stronger daily, and with it, his understanding of her people's profound capacity for loyalty and love. I choose you, he said simply. I choose us. They moved through the chaos of battle with perfect synchronization, their growing resonance allowing them to anticipate each other's movements. Nyara's combat prowess cleared their path while Nathan's knowledge of the terrain kept them ahead of pursuit. They reached the progressive ships just as the purist forces arrived in orbit. The next hours were a blur of advanced medical procedures and genetic science beyond human understanding. Through it all, their mental connection deepened, memories and emotions flowing between them like water. The genetic fusion was unlike anything human science had conceived. Nathan felt his body changing, adapting to match Nyara's enhanced biology. He grew stronger, his senses sharpened, and most remarkably, his skin developed the same bioluminescent patterns as hers. Though he remained human-sized, their patterns now pulsed in perfect harmony. The progressive scientists were ecstatic. The successful fusion proved their theories about human compatibility and offered hope for their species' survival. But for Nathan and Nyara, the scientific implications paled against the profound personal transformation they experienced. Their resonance evolved into something the Valorians had only glimpsed in their most ancient legends, a complete psychological fusion where thoughts and emotions flowed freely between them. They became living proof that their species could not only coexist but evolve together into something greater than either had been alone. As the progressive ships prepared to defend against the approaching purist fleet, Nathan and Nyara stood together, their patterns glowing in synchronized patterns of determination and unity. The battle for their future was far from over, but they would face it as something unprecedented in the history of either species, a perfect fusion of human adaptability and Valerian strength, bound by a love that transcended the boundaries of worlds. The orbital battle above Earth became a turning point in both human and Valerian history. The progressive faction's ships, though outnumbered, held their position against the purist fleet, buying time for something unprecedented to unfold. Nathan and Nyara stood on the progressive flagship's command deck, their synchronized bioluminescent patterns casting shifting lights across the advanced control systems. Their successful genetic fusion had proven more revolutionary than anyone anticipated. The resonance network is expanding, Nyara reported, monitoring the tactical displays. Other compatible pairs across both fleets are beginning to feel it. Through their deepened connection, Nathan understood the significance. Their bond had created a psychic ripple effect, awakening latent compatibility in others. Throughout both fleets, Valerian warriors and human crews found themselves experiencing the first touches of resonance. They're feeling what we feel, Nathan realized. The potential for unity instead of conflict. The effect rippled through the purist ranks, causing confusion and hesitation. Warriors who had been committed to genetic purity suddenly experienced firsthand the power of human Valorian compatibility. Ship by ship, the attacks began to cease. On Earth below, similar scenes unfolded. The human military forces that had been pursuing them stood down as their own compatible individuals began experiencing the resonance. The phenomenon was spreading, breaking down barriers of fear and prejudice through direct emotional connection. A transmission from the Valerian High Council cut through the silence of space. The success of Nathan and Nyara's fusion, combined with the widespread awakening of compatibility, had forced an emergency session. The resulting declaration was historic, official recognition of human Valorian unions as the path forward for both species. In the months that followed, their story became a symbol of hope and change. The first generation of hybrid children were born, including their own daughter, who combined Nyara's towering strength with Nathan's quick adaptability. Each new birth strengthened the bonds between their species. Nathan's transformed biology allowed him to share Nyara's extended lifespan, giving them centuries to help guide the integration of their peoples. The Valorians gained the genetic diversity they desperately needed, while humanity gained access to advanced technology and protection from hostile forces in the galaxy. But beyond the political and scientific implications, their legacy was most profound in the way it changed how both species viewed themselves and their place in the universe. The resonance that had once made the Valorians fearsome warriors now served as a bridge between worlds, proving that difference could be strength and evolution didn't mean losing identity. 5 years after their first meeting in the mountains, Nathan and Nyara stood on a newly constructed observation platform in those same peaks. Their daughter played nearby, her size already approaching Nathan's height though she was only 4, her patterns glowing with joy as she discovered her emerging abilities. "Did you ever imagine this?" Nathan asked, his patterns synchronizing with Nyara's in the familiar dance of their shared emotions. "That day when you crashed?" Nyara's massive hand entwined with his, their size difference no barrier to their connection. "I imagined saving my people," she admitted. "I never dreamed we would save each other." Below them, the valley where they'd first met had been transformed into the first human Valorian integration center, where compatible pairs could safely undergo genetic fusion. The facility represented everything they'd fought for, a future where evolution meant combination rather than competition, where love could literally change the course of species. Their patterns pulsed in unison as they watched the sun set behind the mountains. The same stars that had once seemed to separate their peoples now promised endless possibilities for their shared future. Their daughter's laughter echoed across the peaks, carrying in it the sound of two worlds united, not by force or necessity, but by the most powerful force in any universe, the choice to grow beyond what they had been, together. As darkness fell, their combined bioluminescence lit the platform with swirling colors of contentment and hope. They had started as ranger and warrior, human and alien, two beings separated by unimaginable distances of space and biology. They ended as proof that the greatest evolutionary leaps come not from conflict but from connection, their bond a living testament to the power of choosing love over fear, unity over division, and the unknown promise of tomorrow over the comfortable limitations of today.